Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge all of you for being here, so give yourselves a clap. Thank you so much for making it tonight. I am very excited to be hosting this panel along with my good friend, Pauleanna, and it is an honor to be able to speak on the very things that I think as students, as grads, alums, parents, professors may be wondering, how do we break free from the limiting beliefs? How do we make boss moves? How do we elevate and level up our game? And so this will be all about what you can find in the panel. So we'll get right to it because we have some juicy questions that we want to hear from Pauleanna, and we will make time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, keep them in your back pocket because we'll have more than enough time for that. So let's get started.
Can I take a breath first?
Yes.
There's a lot of people that I love in the room, and so I'm just very emotional, and so I just need a second. Okay. It's just a lot. It's just very nostalgic being here. All right, I'm ready.
Ready.
Hit me.
Okay, well, today we know you as a professional writer. We also know you as a public speaker and a businesswoman, but I want you to connect the dots for us. So walk us through, what are your earliest moments of identifying your skill sets, and maybe share a few examples of that.
Okay, so out of all the hats that I wear, the consistent thread is storytelling. And my love for storytelling, Jamila! I went to high school with her. My love for storytelling started in the 90s. So do y'all remember, those of you who are 30 plus, when we used to get the TV guide in the mail and it was like a booklet? Okay, so one of my favorite things to do when I was younger was go through the TV guide and circle all of the shows that I wanted to watch that week, and I'd make a whole agenda because I've always been fascinated with the anatomy of a story. So I love the villain and the protagonist and the layers and the complexities, and I love the roller coaster of emotions you go through from beginning to end. So I have memories of feeling elated when Sailor Moon would illuminate her magical devices, or I remember when I wanted to emulate the pink Power Ranger, or when I wasn't fighting crime, I was packing my school bag and I was going on the magical school bus with Miss Frizzle, and so I think of these core memories often, but my love for storytelling isn't limited to the screen. I grew up within a church community, and every Sunday I would sit in the pews with my family and I would listen to stories, beautiful testimonies and sermons from the pastor who spoke from the pulpit. And on Sundays we'd either sit around our kitchen table at home or go to my grandmother, and storytelling was very evident. We'd share laughs and cries as we exchange stories across the dinner table, right? These are core memories that are forever embedded in me. And I really do believe that, when you connect the dots of your life and when you are able to keep that inner child alive, you will learn so much about yourself.
That's so good. I wasn't around. That's not my era. I think I just aged myself.
How many people watch the shows that I mentioned? A few. Okay, cool.
Thanks to those who connect with me. I see you. And you're such a passionate speaker about all these memories, which it kind of took us all through this journey with you, but you're also, like we mentioned, a celebrity ghostwriter, and as the team introduced you, you have a team that you reference as content ninjas.
Yes, and some of them are here.
And that speaks to your level of excellence in your field, to be able to, have employees, you have a team behind you, and I want you to share, you mentioned how important it is for you to talk about school, education, how you navigated through your career. So I want to hear the story behind your story of being neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. And I want to mention that because a lot of people in this room are also students or alums and going through that as well. So walk us through how you've navigated with that in school and in your career.
So for context, I grew up with a learning difference. I felt tortured by my education. I knew something was off as young as grade 5 when we were introduced to novels and small reading groups. And I struggled with reading comprehension, and instead of digesting the words, I would just use my finger to skim so I could keep up with my classmates. I when I entered high school, I was an average C and D student. I failed many of my classes, and as a result, I had to attend summer school and night school every year, and I barely graduated on time. And to put into words what I experienced, you know, when the teacher would talk at the front of the class, it was almost as if she was speaking in another language. When I would read the textbooks over and over again, it was like the words were floating off the page. It was really hard for me to grasp a concept, and so my learning curve was a lot slower than most. And even as an adult, I still exhibit traces of a processing deficiency, and it just takes me a little bit longer to assess it takes my brain a little bit longer to really assess the information that's gathered by my senses. You know, I remember being humiliated and ridiculed by classmates, including some of my teachers who contributed to making my life hell. And so I just feel like in elementary school, oftentimes they shuffle you from grade to grade, and they don't examine why you're just getting by. And so when it came time for me to choosing my major, so in grade 11 and 12, you have to choose your major, you have to choose your college, I was encouraged to play it safe. I really feel like I was discarded by the education system, and I was encouraged to play it safe instead of given the opportunity to explore my wildest dreams. And so the biggest lesson that I can bring forward today as a result of it all is to learn how to hack your brain, right? Learn how to understand the ways in which you learn and retain information. And I would also say, you know, everyone knows that there's 7 different learning styles. Does everyone know what their learning style is? Right, exactly, because in the education system, they paint us all with one big broad brush, and the ones who cannot keep up are discarded instead of really assessing the best ways in which they learn. And so I have learned how to make rooms and conversations work for me, and given the spaces I occupy today at a very high level, you know, I've had to also rewire my brain and rewire those negative messages to inform myself that I'm not slow, I'm not dumb, I just learn differently.
So good. Thank you for sharing that with us, because I'm thinking of my high school and elementary school, and coming from, I'm Colombian, so I was born there, and that also kind of plays a role as well. And so growing up, I did think I had a little bit of like an issue. Mm-hmm. And I think many of us can attest to that. So thanks for affirming us all. And I think that's something we'll all take back of what is my learning style.
I'm very surprised that nobody knows their learning style. Oh, okay. Well, you're an educator, so.
So maybe that's a quiz we can all take. And it's probably very nostalgic, like you mentioned, to be back here at Sheridan. Mm-hmm. This wasn't my campus. I actually had the opportunity to attend Sheridan online in 2020. I attended the online campus, but it was Trafalgar, and I studied social service work. And my best memory, I would say, despite it being online, is how supportive I had the experience of our faculty. I did have a hard time because online learning wasn't for me. It was just a second career option for me. I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, and so it was just an option granted to me after experiencing so many different things. So I was so grateful that I could go back to my teachers and ask them questions. I would say, you know what, I don't really like group work. I don't want to work with people, especially not online. And so could I just do this project myself? And time again, they were just very understanding that it had nothing to do with them, but it was just our heavy school projects that we had to deal with. And so I'm very grateful that I got to do that. I have not visited my campus, so coming here was very exciting for me. So thank you for Sheridan for having us here. But I want you to share, Pauleanna, you attended the Davis campus. Yeah. So describe your experience while in college. What pivotal moments stood out for you?
Honestly, it was comparable to every other student. Boys, sports, parties, new friendships. Again, I did not feel equipped, so I can't say I had I can't say that I squeezed all the juice out of my experience, because I do feel like when I chose my program, it was a safe program. I listened to the rules, went by everyone else's playbook. So I really wasn't in the headspace to like I wasn't excited to take on the world, right? I was kind of just like, I'm here, I'm depressed, I don't know what my future looks like, and I'm going to do what I can with the energy that I have. But Sheridan itself, I will say this, as an alum, and from what I remember as a student, the faculty was always nice and very helpful. The workflow is very efficient. You ask for something, you get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the school itself is actually a wonderful school.
Yeah, I will say I echo that too. I would send a lot of emails. I always had questions. I was that girl.
Yeah, and they're very responsive. So.
Yeah, it's good. And so I want to know how you decided on your major, which was office administration. How did you decide on that?
Again, it was a safe option. Because of my grades in high school, on paper, I didn't have many options to choose from. But at the time, it was a very popular program as well. A lot of young women were choosing it. And so again, I just chose a safe option because I felt like the adults in my world put my dreams in a box. I always knew that I wanted to be a writer from the time I could hold a pen. However, and this was actually fostered because I was bullied in high school. And when I would spend time by myself, and I would, doodle my sketchbook and like kind of just write in my journal about what life would be like outside of this hellhole I was in. Those peaceful, quiet moments made me feel really good. And I'm like, I want to feel this way forever. So I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I had failed grade 11 and 12 English. So the math was not mathing. So the guidance counselors and the teachers were like, girl, please, like, you are not going to be a writer. You're never going to make a living from your art. And so I ended up choosing a safe program because that was just the rules that I followed at the time.
Yeah, and I think we can all relate to someone in our lives that put us into a box. Yeah. And as a result of that, we played it safe, and it's not until you hear people like Pauleanna rise to the occasion and say, well, you're a celebrity ghostwriter, look at what you've done with all the obstacles that you faced. In many of your interviews, your speeches today, you share about struggling with depression and anxiety. And we do know that 1 in 4 college students actually experience depression and anxiety while they're going through school. And this is never spoken about. I never spoke about it because I didn't want to seem like there was anything lacking. And I didn't want that to stop me from potentially getting great opportunities. And so I was just going through it instead of asking for the support. What advice do you have for anyone in our audience or listeners watching this of who feels overwhelmed by their current circumstances or the next steps they need to make in their career while suffering or dealing with depression and anxiety?
Before I get to the advice, I'll give context. So I'm a high functioning individual with crippling depression and anxiety. So I experience anxiety attacks and bouts of sadness, in addition to fighting negative voices inside my head that most people will never understand. And when I talk about sadness, like, I'm not talking about the tears that fall when you get a paper cut or your puppy gets sick. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being crippled to the point where I can't, like, simple things that most people take for granted, brushing your hair, taking a shower, just functioning in society, socializing. There are times where it's very difficult for me, right? However, with the help of lifestyle changes, medication, medical professionals, my therapist, I've been managing my mental condition since 2009. But prior to that is when it was at its worst, and I really battled a lot with self-harm. What I would say is that, the only way I know how to climb out of any hole that I'm in is gradually. I think everyone's recovery process looks very different. The formula that works for me may not work for you. However, I think your attitude matters. You know what I mean? Like, for me, when I think about mental health, I think about the lost talent that wasn't nurtured. I think about students who fell through the cracks. Like, I was able to kind of fight my way through, but what has helped is normalizing the conversation among my friends, among my family, among my community, because when I talk about it, I actually feel better. It helps me understand that everybody's going through something. We're all fighting our own private battles behind closed doors, and what I've learned is that, where you're at isn't where you have to stay. I hope that I live my life in a way that illustrates that you can live a full, colorful life even if you have a mental illness.
And I'll say you do a really great job as a friend in giving me space to do that. There's many times that I call her, and
crying,
I'm just bawling my eyes out over the little, what to me, to other people may seem like the littlest things, and it's the biggest deal for me. And you really provide that space for me to cry it out, have the conversation, and then you do say, how are you going to get out of this?
Yeah.
What tools do you have in place? What resources do you have? And because of you, I was able to actually find a therapist this round. So thank you. And I think that's really great advice for everybody else, is that what works for you may not work for everybody else.
Yeah.
But there's always the tools and the opportunities by you sharing, your struggles that help people like myself, as someone who's high functioning, always on social media, always in the public eye, get through that. And so you're just a great friend for that, and we appreciate you for sharing that.
I think I think it's really important that as we navigate, when I call somebody or text someone or email someone, I try to open up with either a statement or a question that shows consideration for their well-being. The worst thing, I hate when someone texts me and they just pull up with a random question, and I always respond, hi, how are you? Thanks for asking me, you know, so they know what's up. That is triggering to me. So for me, it's just I think it's just really important for us to give each other grace and just be mindful how the energy you bring to somebody, because you don't know what they're dealing with.
Absolutely. And as a mental health advocate, you have a team that you work with. So how do you integrate the conversations around mental health or provide that space into your work, but not just limited to your employees and your team, but also in your professional development?
So what's really alarming is, on social media, we glamorize business ownership and we make it look very trendy and easy. But the reality is that business owners are twice as likely to report a lifetime history of depression. We're twice as likely to attempt suicide or check into a psychiatric ward. We're 3 times as likely to have bipolar disorder, and 3 times as likely to experience substance abuse or addiction due to stress or financial related issues. That is very, so when people come to me, they're like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, do you really?
You sure about that?
Because there's a lot at stake, right? And so, again, normalizing conversations makes it a hell of a lot easier. But what I've also done is I've actually hired an in-house therapist for my team, so that they can talk shit about me when I'm not in the room. So they can have group sessions with the therapist, because I run an agency, and an agency that is very high functioning, and we don't get a lot of sleep, and there's a lot going on. So I understand that the conditions in which we work does bring stress to the table. And so if I'm gonna bring stress to the table, I'm also gonna bring relief. So we have a resident therapist. Did anyone watch Billions? Yes, no? A few people? Okay, so then the character Wendy Rhodes. That's where I got she's a psychiatrist to the agency on Billions, and that's where I got the idea from. I'm like, that makes sense. So they can also book individual sessions with her on my dime.
I think that's solid. I think that, I'm an entrepreneur and I run a business, but I definitely, when I do have a team, I think it's, like you said, you bring stress, so you bring the relief. We're going to give you the work, but we're also going to give you a place to house it. And at the end of the day, it helps them excel, right? It helps them become the better version of themselves. And you want them to produce excellent work, but 100%. Not at the stake of their mental health, not at the stake of, providing poor work just because, they were going through something that they maybe wouldn't have come head on and said, Pauleanna, I'm struggling. Because of pride, ego, or just to not be discarded, or maybe they feel like that. At our level, there's not a lot of margin for error, and so their mental health is really important to me. That's so good. I'll take a few notes for my books when I start hiring my team. So from hearing this and now hearing about your agency, some of us would probably assume that your career happened overnight. And it may seem like that, but that's not the case. Right. You worked in corporate for about 10 years as an executive assistant. So what inspired you to make that leap into entrepreneurship from corporate to entrepreneurship?
I mean, honestly, the simple answer is that I was committed to keeping my dreams alive, right? I think when we're little girls, we're told that we can be anything and everything we want to be, and then we grow up and we enter high school, and the teachers or the adults in our life are like, you need to be a little bit more realistic. And a lot of people get stuck in that gray area and totally discard what their inner child needs, whether it's a sense of adventure, play, creativity, whatever. And for me, it was critical for me to keep my dreams alive of being a writer. Now, whether that was a side hustle or a full-time situation, whether it took me 5 years or 50 years, I was going to commit to it. So most of us, I would assume, have a side hustle. The government safety net is bar none. And so just to survive, most people have something on the side. So I was a side hustler for 10 years, and then in January 2019 is when I decided to take the leap. It just made sense for me. My salary cap was $65,000, and I almost tripled my salary in my side hustle. So for me, it was a sign that I can bet on myself and move forward.
I think that's a really great indicator of when it's time for us to kind of take that next step. And you're right, entrepreneurship is glamorized to kind of be like, let me just quit my job, I'm going to throw everything away.
Yeah.
So I think you, like in the way you explained, it gives us a realistic example that you didn't just quit, you had that side hustle.
And I stuck to it for 10 years before I decided to jump, right? And I just paced myself. It's like, I was in my 20s when I started in court. Like, what's the rush?
What's the rush? Yeah. And now you're able, with all the skills that you gain being in corporate, because I think sometimes, at least now in my generation, it's almost like we bash the corporate business world. Because
I loved being in corporate. I just hated the politics, and I hated when, nothing got me more mad nothing gets me more mad is when someone thinks that just because they have a title, they can talk down to you. I had to leave because I was going to smack somebody. You know what I mean? Like, I was just so irritated at the corporate structure, at the politics, I was an executive assistant. One of my bosses is here, and I love her. She was actually so good to me. But I was an executive assistant, and honestly, you ought to be nicer to assistants. I will say that, because we really run shit, And to get to her, you have to go through me, And so you want to be nice to me. But there are many people who looked down on me, who ignored me, treated me like I was invisible. And so I will say this, you can learn something from everything. And so it definitely built tough skin. It helped me, it allowed me to develop empathy for other people. My 10 years, every single day I walked into that building, it was almost as if I was walking into business school, right? I remember my boss one day, Wayne, he called me and he was like, he's on his way to work and he's driving. He's like, can you read me the sales reports, right? And again, I have dreams in the back of my mind of being a founder and a boss and a CEO, and I couldn't read him the sales reports. I didn't know what some of the acronyms meant, and I'm like, I need to get my shit together. Like, if I want to get out of here, I need to look at this as a learning opportunity and pay attention. And that's when I started asking more questions. I started raising my hand for various projects. I started taking meeting notes in meetings I didn't have any business being in. I really took advantage of my time during my 10 years, and I don't think I would have been the entrepreneur I am today without really tapping in and taking it seriously. I think even if you hate your job, your attitude matters, And so that experience was transferable, and I was able to build $1 million company based on the skills that I acquired during my 9 to 5.
That's amazing. Yeah, let's clap for that. And I think this is even something in education as well, where some people, could say that, what's the point of going through school, or what's the point of going through corporate? And I think, like you said, there's one thing that I wish I took away from education and having an actual job. I was working as a bartender and a server for about 4 years and had my dance company. But if there's one thing I wish that I got the opportunity to do was work in corporate, because that is responsibility, that's character, that's waking up every single day to go to the same place, and you clock in, you clock out, you fulfill the same tasks, and that provides repetition. And if you can do that in corporate, running a business, like, those are skills that you built to now have the resilience, the discipline and just to be able to like get through go through what entrepreneurship brings, like all the grit, like you have that and you were able to build that, and that's a skill that honestly now I'm learning to be able to get through those hard days in business. And it's like, no, you got to get up, you got to do it, and you figure it out. So what go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to ask you, what 3 tips can you share that helped you transition that side hustle to full-time entrepreneurship? Yes, you 3 times your corporate salary, but what was that, shift, 3 tips that needed to happen?
So mastering your time.
Okay.
I think that people are just
scattered.
Like in job interviews, they always ask you your 5-year plan, but like most people can't even manage 24 hours. It's like, right? So, I don't think it's ever it's not a lack of time that we have. Like the truth is that most people mismanage it. So when you have a side hustle and a full-time job, you're just forced, like you don't waste any second of the day. Time management is life management and management of yourself. The other thing is skill building, right? So volunteering for opportunities, joining committees and clubs, raising your hand for projects, asking questions. I would meet with all of the heads of the department. I would ask questions about their career journey. Like I was really tuned into, in order for me to run a successful company, I really need to study how one was run. So building on my skills and like I said, learning how to read the sales reports, the acronyms, like understanding the anatomy of the business, creating your own opportunities within the company as well. So I'll give you an example. So I was an executive assistant, and for a second I was really interested in possibly moving to the communications department. At this time, I'm already a very established journalist, and I know I can run circles around them. So it's like, it makes sense, right? So I go to the head of comms, and she said, you won't even get an interview because you don't have a degree. So I was like, and that pissed me off because I had the skill set and I had the track record. So I would say months later, they implemented office hours, right? Liz, she implemented office hours, and this is one of the presidents of the company, and where anybody in the company could just walk into the president's office and just spend 5 minutes with her, asking her any questions. I sat very closely to her, and I just noticed that nobody took advantage of this opportunity, whether they were intimidated, whether they didn't know what to say, maybe they're afraid of getting fired. So I walked into her office, and I literally told her, I'm like, your vetting process for identifying talent is flawed, because you have someone sitting right in front of you who has a skill and has a talent, and you're wasting it. And she looks at me and she's like, what? Like, girl, what? Like, why are you talking to me like that? But I was very serious because I do think, again, lost talent. I think that people like me fall through the cracks. Anyways, how I created my own opportunity, I raised my hand, I walked into her office, I kept it very real with her, and then I said, I know you do a lot of public speaking, I'd love the opportunity to ghostwrite a speech for you. And she was a little hesitant, but she did allow me to write her commencement speech, and that was one of the first opportunities in ghostwriting that I had working for her.
That's amazing.
So it's really about identifying opportunities. I think success leaves clues, but a lot of us are just not paying close enough attention to take advantage of them. So I hear a lot of people complain that the stars on the line for them, or they're not attracting the opportunities, or blah, blah, whatever excuse they have. And it's, no, you're not paying attention to the signs.
Yeah, and it's almost like you walked in that room and demanded, and claimed.
Well, you just have to be sure of yourself, and when you are sure of yourself, just make sure you can back that shit up, you know?
And that reminded me, you shared something on social media, your experience with that woman that she was a billionaire, and you got on a call with her, and you were like, Yeah, so I had a mentor call with a billionaire, and I remember being on Zoom with her, and I was really excited, and I was introducing myself, and I'm like, I'm widely known for, and she's like, wait, widely known for what, right? I was like, oh my God. And I was really nervous for a second, and she was like, hold up, and then she turned to her other screen, and she's like, I'm gonna Google you. And she Googles me, and she checks me out, and she's like, okay, continue. And I continue with my elevator pitch, and I'm like, Jesus. I continue with my elevator pitch, and we continue with the conversation, and 30 minutes turned into an hour, and it ended up being very, very fruitful, lots of tears, it was beautiful. But if you're gonna be confident and step to the plate, make sure you have the track record to back it up, because she was almost gonna cancel me. She almost shut down the meeting, but I had the track record, and she was like, okay, it's cool. That's so good. I think I listened to that a few times when you posted on your stories, because
Yeah.
I, again, take a page out of your book all the time. And so thank you for sharing that. And I think if there's one thing I could add to that you've taught me, and also just being in rooms, is that your network really matters. And so not only you creating those opportunities, but the people that, look at this room, you maintain relationships with so many people, not just your students, your old boss, and just professors and people that you get to communicate with. So I think your network has also allowed you to kind of step into those rooms, and those people end up saying, yeah, Pauleanna Reid, yeah, that's the woman you call. And so I think that that's another, great tip to say is, take a page from that, is you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know that person is going to be the one. I mean, I'm here because of you. So
Yeah. Dope.
yeah, thank you. I'm just giving you your flowers,
I appreciate you. I love you.
So, all that being said,
Wait, can we do a vibe check real quick?
yeah, how are you guys doing?
Okay, we're all right? Okay.
I love the smiles. I love the serious face when she's speaking, and when we're talking, you're concentrated, and then the smile. You're still here. There's still a pulse. Yeah? Okay, cool. So, we all, raise up your hand if you have a big, wild dream in the room. I think all of us.
Oh, I love that.
Me too. And so I'll echo that. I mean, I'm struggling to kind of follow my dreams, and I think some people are saying I want to take a chance on my dreams. I've been boxed in my life, or I haven't gone all in. You went all in, and you followed your dreams. So how did you manage that self-doubt or fear that would creep up when you wanted to start your business?
You're never going to feel 100% ready, ever. It doesn't even, just because someone's successful, it doesn't mean they don't feel fear. It doesn't, you're never going to feel 100% ready. I think the other thing is, I'm just not afraid of looking embarrassed, feeling silly, falling on my face, failing. I'm totally okay with that. I think the other thing is, when I've studied other entrepreneurs and successful founders, I've realized that every entertainer, executive, founder, celebrity, everyone was once an amateur. That puts a lot of things in perspective for me. Most people started at zero. And if they started at zero, it means it's a possibility model for me too. So that honestly, I try to separate facts versus my feelings. And when I separate the facts are, there's a pathway that I can follow. And so that's what helps me put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and that's something I always remind myself as well, is start before you're ready. You're never gonna have all the tools right in front. And it's almost literally like taking one step at a time. And every step you take, you learn new things, you add things into your toolbox. And so, and I would say mistakes are our biggest opportunity. Like you said, opportunity models where you're like, okay, I've done that, next time, I'll do something different. And if there's one analogy that I always like to give is, we're not born out of the womb walking. Like you said, everybody starts at zero. And I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a baby come out and be like, yeah, I'm ready to walk and talk.
Right.
So we are babies in business. And when I started, it was like, I absolutely don't know what to do, but there is somebody who has been there. So let me piggyback and kind of watch, like you said, study successful people, and they've also made their mistakes. So you can study those too and learn from those too.
And just not giving up. Nothing makes me more sad than someone who's given up on their dream. It's it just really breaks my heart when someone's let go. If anything, you can edit the dream or allow it to evolve into something else, but don't give up.
I like the edit. There's been so many days where I'm like, I'm gonna go and start applying for jobs, and then entrepreneurship can take a back seat. So I like the edit part. I think that's a really good component. But you know what's hard is that we live in a world that craves fast results. So we have almost like this instant gratification microwave society where it seems like I start something today and I should have something tomorrow to show. So can you share some of the pivotal moments in your journey, when you were you became a senior contributor on Forbes, and then you started your celebrity ghostwriting agency. That didn't happen overnight. We know that. We've heard from you. But I guess
I'll go back a little bit more.
Yeah, go backtrack for that for me.
So I'm in the working world. December 2009, I sent a Facebook message to a woman who changed my life forever. I sent a Facebook message. She doesn't know who I am, but I'm a longtime admirer of her. She's fly, she's confident, she's stylish, she runs her own company. I asked her to dinner. I'm like early 20s at this point. She says yes, she's very generous with her time, and I'm like a lost puppy. I'm like, I have these skills, I don't know what to do. She suggests that I should start a blog. This is 2009, going into 2010. So I start the blog, and it's literally just like a mishmash of like my personal diary, like things I'm just building in public, because she's like, if you want to write, write. A year goes by, and unbeknown to me, she's watching me quietly. She's watching my consistency, my work ethic, my passion. She's watching to see if I show up. A year later, after I start the blog, she calls me. She's like, I have an opportunity for you that I think you'll like. And it was an interview with one of Canada's largest media publishing houses. As a result of her cosign, I was able to become a freelance journalist, and I was then published in every major newspaper for hundreds of thousands of readers across the country for 4 years, right? So the lesson here is, number one, like, you don't know who's watching and what power they hold, right? That's really important. Number two, it was pretty ballsy of me to ask her to dinner, but I'm always gonna raise my hands. I'm always gonna try and take up space. And number three, like, you can't get mad at someone who demands the best out of you. She gave me homework, I honored it, and I was committed to it because I know that it would get me. I didn't know what the next step was, but I know it would get me there. So I freelance during this time. 2014, I write my first book, I release it, it's a success. And then shortly thereafter, I was like, what does the next step look like for me? Because writing is a very vast pool. Like, there's so many different verticals when it comes to the world of professional writing. 2014, I stumbled across an article about a ghostwriter, and that's what unlocked for me. Today, we see the journalism industry go to shit, right? There's a lot, like, all of the major publications have laid off all their journalists. The pay is horrible. A lot of publications are using ChatGPT and replacing. It's like, it's a mess. I was able to really assess the industry 100 years ago, and I knew that my path in journalism wasn't necessarily going to get me the lifestyle that I wanted, wasn't going to fulfill me as much as I wanted, and so ghostwriting seemed like a really great first step. It planted a seed that I grew. Now, so there's a few lessons here. Number one, it's really important for women to tell their stories publicly. We oftentimes get erased from every important conversation, right? I'm so sick of when I look for advice on Google, I see white men. And it's like, where are the women at? You know what I mean? Where are our voices in the conversation? And so because she decided to tell her story, she birthed somewhat, she was part of an idea that was birthed, and now I'm like living my dream today. So I didn't jump in right away. What I did was I freelanced for an agency in Philadelphia remotely while I was working full time. And that was my introduction to the celebrity world. So my first assignment was to write a keynote speech for a world-renowned supermodel. And when I submitted it, they didn't have any edits. It was perfect. And I remember when I did, I went to Nancy, I was like, yo, this is what I did. That was my sign that I was like, okay, I may have something here. So like, when you have an idea, it's okay for you to dip your toe in the water. I think oftentimes people have ideas, they want to just like brand right away and have a website and do all these major things. You can test the waters. You can host informational interviews with people who are already in the industry. You can work part-time for an agency. Just see if it's something that you actually want to do. So that's like the initial steps that I took in ghostwriting. The other thing that I did, so when I was working, I would say throughout almost my entire 10 years, I didn't really take vacation. All of my vacation was allocated to trips to the States. And you mentioned your network, so I would literally fly to New York. New York was my city of choice to start with, and then I expanded into DC, LA, Atlanta. So New York was my place of choice. I would literally fly there for a few days. I would meet with people, coffees, lunches, dinners, sunrise to sunset. There are times where I couldn't even afford a hotel, so I had to like sleep at the airport. My mom doesn't even know this. So I had to like sleep at the airport. My mom's here.
Hi, Mom.
So I couldn't afford a hotel, or maybe a friend's couch wasn't available for me to bum. So I had to sleep at the airport, and I would take a sponge bath, and the next day in the bathroom, and the next day I would literally meet from 9 to 9. And I did that over and over. If I wanted to fly to the moon tomorrow, I could get a ticket. That's how strong my network is, right? And I think it's also about it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. So, you know, I mean, we can have a whole conversation around networking, but when I say that I was on my grind while I was working my full-time job, like every waking moment where I wasn't at my desk was devoted to my side hustle.
That's so good. I go to the States a lot also, and I think I should do that too. I don't know about the airport part.
I mean, you do what you gotta do.
Yeah, you do what you
honestly,
gotta do.
When you don't have resources and you don't have money, you get creative. We've all, especially those of us who are people of color, black people, like we've all seen our grandmas, our aunties, our moms, like make something out of nothing. You know what I mean? And so it's like those skills are very transferable. And so you figure, when you want something badly enough, you will figure it the hell out, you know? We talk about quick fixes. Like back in the day, in my day, when we did like long form division and you had to like, all the things, like that's how I apply that to life. Yeah. Like when I am stuck with a challenge, I'm like, okay, like what makes the next logical step? Like what do I need to do? And I figure it out. I don't like excuses. Yeah. You know?
I know. You've talked.
Yeah, I'm a tough friend to have.
She is a tough friend to have. And you know what it is? It's such a solid thing to have though. Like I'm not gonna lie, I think it's so easy to have cookie cutter friends and people that just kind of tell you what you want to hear. I've had days, like I mentioned, where I have struggles in my business. I'm also just starting, and not just starting, it's been about a few years, and now that I'm expanding into the States, if there's one thing that I have to, you know, there's two things actually. One is like, what would Jesus do? And then the other one's like, what would Pauleanna do? Because if she was here, what do you mean you're 24 hours in Florida and you're just gonna sit by the beach? You can sit by the beach and go network and go see who you know and go see who you can meet. So that's always ingrained in the back of my head. And I think, like you said, if you really want it bad enough, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of where you are, there's always something you can do. And if you don't love where you're at, then you're going to do whatever it takes to hopefully one day get out of that situation. And so my why, and I constantly think about it, kind of brings me to tears sometimes, is that my mom did everything to bring us here to this country. And so who am I to sit here and be 100%. So comfortable when she sacrificed 4 children, a marriage, to bring us here just so we could have this life that I so have, and I'm making excuses. So that's something that like picks me up every single day. And you know, it's one of those like tough love type of moments, but you have to embrace them. Otherwise it's always gonna be an excuse, and it's always gonna be like a puppy dog thing.
But the other thing is too, when I was little, my parents used to take us to the library every single week. And even through picture books, right? Like even if you don't have the financial means, even if you're in an environment where you didn't grow up with role models, we had access to the library. So like, I don't want to hear it, right? And so like, we are exposed. I was exposed to different environments, places, people, things. And so once you are exposed to something, you can't unsee it. So the beautiful thing about having a vivid imagination is that you create your own universe, you create your own world. And so when I think about what I want my life to feel like and look like, it doesn't look like a 5x5 cubicle. You feel me? Like, hell no. Like, I just couldn't do it. And I just couldn't do it. Not when you've seen so much, whether it's through media, whatever, just like, why not you? Why can't you have access to those resources and that level of wealth? And so that was also a motivating factor to me too.
Yeah, that's a huge possibility model. I think that you're able to see that. You create it in your mind. You're able to see it. It's like, why not you? And I think my first instant of, I don't usually see Spanish women or young Spanish women. I'm 26, but when I was on breakfast television, I never saw anybody my age do that. And so I always thought maybe I'm just in the wrong room. And so when I saw what people were able to do, what you were able to do, again, it was one of those things that lit a fire under my butt to say, okay, you can do this too. It was done once. Why can't it be done again? Right? So you mentioned books, you've mentioned blogs. Are you kind of, I want to say, what does your media diet consist of? Like, do you watch specific shows? Do you source your inspiration from anywhere? And are you mindful of what media you do consume or you don't consume based on your obviously creative approach and your work?
So one thing I really admire about my sister and my mom is that they can contribute to any conversation. person. Like, they just know so much shit about so much shit. Like, I'm just really impressed by the fact that they can adapt to so many different environments and conversations. And so, like, witnessing that also inspired me to just like be in the know. Like, you cannot be interesting if you're not interested, right? I'm sure many of you have heard that, right? Like, to be an interesting person,
clap.
To be an interesting person requires you to make an active investment in like the things that you learn and how you add value to a conversation. And so how I applied this, so I was in New York, I was at a meeting with the Forbes team, and we had a roundtable discussion at the time. The Bill Cosby trial was really hot. And because I was just well-informed, because I was curious, because I had a healthy media diet, I was able to contribute to the conversation in a meaningful way. And I think that was definitely one of the factors that led to me getting hired as a freelance contributor, because I had an opinion. And by the way, I will say this. So I've been at Forbes.com for 8 years as a freelance contributor. I rank in the top 1% of the global network of 3,000 writers, right?
Come on.
Thank you. But I really, it's because I have things to say. It's because I have an opinion, because I actively participate. So I have a newsletter that goes out every Monday, that's been going out every Monday for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's called Cool Shit to Talk About at the Office. And every Monday I inform my subscribers on items pop culture moments and things that they can bring forward to conversations, because I just feel like you feel more confident networking and speaking to people when you feel equipped and you know what's going on in the world, in your industry and pop culture, etc.
I'll say that's one of the emails I don't unsubscribe from, because your emails are dead. Who's on Pauleanna's newsletter? Okay. And who's not? and yeah, and I'll say it's what you said is so impactful, especially now as adults. I also think there's something to be said about what are we talking about? What are we discussing when we're in rooms?
Yeah.
You know, are we talking about our friends and people and what they're doing and who just had kids and who just got a raise? Or are we talking about the things, I mean, that matters too, but are we talking about the things that matter and the conversations that actually, raise eyebrows and kind of oh, how did you know about that? And so I love your newsletter. Always gives me some cool to talk about on a Monday.
Thank you.
So I think we can all agree that Pauleanna's a boss, but you might, for me, I actually didn't know what ghostwriting was. And maybe, does anyone not know what ghostwriting is? That word is kind of what is ghostwriting? Are you curious about ghostwriting? Yeah, me too. I mean, although I've heard and I do my homework, but can you explain what ghostwriting is? And it is very niche. Like you said, you're the niche. Top 1% of Forbes.
You literally can't go to school for it. Right? So being at Forbes.com gave me tremendous leverage. So like I said, in 2014, I discovered the article. I read about a woman who was a ghostwriter.
Yes.
I then freelanced for an agency and thought, okay, I can do this. So in 2017, I started my agency called The Writer's Block. And today we have 20 employees, and we consist of all women of color, which I'm really happy about. And one of the reasons I made that decision is just because, when you are looking at the top agencies in the world, UTA, WME, CAA, or even the top 2% of celebrities in the world, their teams consist of all white people, right? And so I do feel like when you diversify your team, especially when you have badass women on your team, that's when shit really gets done. So sorry, what was the question? What is ghostwriting?
What is ghostwriting?
So my team, we help people of influence at the highest level convert their personal stories into brand assets. So we are writing their books, their keynote speeches, and their op-eds. We are not just putting pen to paper. We have clients who are hiring us because they are thinking about how to meaningfully contribute to some of the most important conversations in the world. They want us to help them navigate certain cultural, societal, and generational sensitivities. They are trying to avoid getting canceled. They want a safe space to discuss their opinions about certain things. They're thinking about life beyond throwing their last ball or singing their last song, right? They want to create a legacy asset for themselves. And so they need to be present, need to be visible, they need to be part of the conversation. And having a collaborator helps move the needle on that. Now, you're not just hiring someone to put pen to paper, you're hiring a structural thinker, you're hiring an architect, you're hiring a human diary, you're hiring someone who can decode your ideas. And so my agency consists of women who contribute to culture in a very meaningful way.
I think I have to hire you. No, but that's amazing. And you did also mention that you scaled your company to $1 million.
Yes.
What's the, I guess, shift or the strategies that you use to scale that?
Honestly, there's so many, but the most important strategy that I say is applicable to anybody who has a side hustle or a full-time business is focusing on client care and client retention. We get so many clients that come our way because they had a poor experience somewhere else, and we prioritize our customer journey map, right? So we think about everything from the first touch point to when they're offboarded. But the other thing is when clients come to my agency, they really don't leave, right? Our client life cycle spans many years. I mean, on average, maybe 4 to 5, because once we do one asset for them and we understand their voice and who they are and build their brand, they want us to touch everything. So I would say what's most applicable is focusing on how you handle clients and creating a really valuable and unique experience for them. And that will keep them coming back. Because there's 3 rules to sales, right? You can get a new customer, you can upsell an existing customer, or you can get a customer to buy more frequently. And so if you remember that, you'll be good.
I can't take notes.
I can say so many other things, but it's like if you focus on that, then I think that's where most companies drop the ball.
Yeah, and would you say that, I guess, scaling and making more money, has there been a mindset component attached to that?
I mean, absolutely. So our money stories start as young as 3 years old, right? A money story is the impact your childhood has on your perception of money. So the things that you've listened to, the things that you've watched, the things that you've absorbed since you were 3 or 4. And I think it's really important for us to realize that that plays a very important role in the decisions we make today. There are friends that I know that have similar services or the same services, and I charge 8 times more than them. A rule that I follow for myself is that like your self-worth is your ceiling. You know, how you see yourself is very, very important. Like for me, again, I've seen too many possibility models. I've seen too many women killing it. I've seen too many, I've seen it happen. So like, why not me? So when I go into negotiations, I'm asking for everything that I want. Why not me? Like, it just doesn't make any sense, you know? And honestly, I have several mentors and 2 of them are male. And being mentored by men is such a different world. Like, the rules just don't apply to them. You know, they don't give a shit about anything. Like, they ask for what they want, they break rules, they rewrite the playbook when they feel like it. And so I've adapted a lot of that same energy.
And thanks for sharing that. So you mentioned the money story,
yeah.
And it starts as young as 3. For those of us who had maybe we have a lack money story. Maybe we have, I don't know if I want to say lack, but maybe we have a money mindset or a money story that isn't contributed to where we want to be right now. And maybe that's
you can always rewrite it.
And so what's that was actually
you can always rewrite it. It's just, I think the first step to that is defining success and what that looks like for you.
Okay.
Because that looks different for everybody.
Yes.
Right? I love money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I love how it feels to have money. I like how it feels to swipe my card and not look at the price tag.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, but I also know what it's like to not have it.
Yes.
You know, like my family has weathered financial storms, I'm sure just like yours. I know what it's like to not to have it. And that's, it feels, I don't like how that feels either.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, I'm not so much chasing a dollar amount as much as I'm chasing a feeling. And that's really important to me. So I think the first step is just defining what success means to you, and then you're able to reverse engineer that and take the appropriate steps to get there.
That's good. And I think something that you touched on is, define what success means to you, because for somebody it's $1 million, but just as fast as they get it is as fast as they lose it too.
100%. I mean, doesn't matter how much money you have. There's issues and problems that arise.
Every stage.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I've had $0 in my bank account, and I've had $1 million in my bank account. Like, there are payroll, tax, you got to pay the tax man. And that's like, oh, but there are like more money, more problems for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. The easy part is actually making the money. The hardest part is sustaining it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as you grow, you realize that, I mean, that's something that I'm going through, is that as you grow, you realize, oh, that's HST, then I need employees.
When you're an adult, you just realize
money.
everything costs money. You're like, wow, like, my parents really went through this. Like, I can't even believe it. Like,
now
everything costs money. It's like, I get it now. Like, I get it.
Yeah. And for some people, you mentioned again, success looks different. I think the biggest thing is, when we've seen the storms that we've gone through financially and the places where we don't want to be, I think for me, is something that inspires me is to not be at the same place where I once was. I remember the days where we've had to scruff and figure it out. And I remember those days I've even called you and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. And we just figure it out. But I remember coming to Canada and living in a shelter and having to move every year because my family couldn't afford rent. And I don't want to have to go through that. And I mean, it is a crisis. Like, there is a housing kind of situation going on. I'm sure a lot of us can relate. And so it's kind of putting that into your mindset of like, I don't want to be there. And so I'm going to create these opportunities so that I'm not going backwards.
Yeah.
And
once you've been poor
and
you know what that feels like, you don't ever want to be there.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we're getting close to our Q&A and towards the end of my questions, and then we're going to do a rapid round. But I want to actually take this to the mentorship route because you mentioned 2 of your mentors are males, and then you have other mentors as well. It's a central theme in what you've done. How do you approach that? How have you, you took someone, the lady out for dinner. How did you approach mentorship and finding these mentors?
I don't even know. So I have 7 mentors. They've all been mentoring me since for 10 years, honestly. So good. I don't buy every ebook, every course. You will not see me at every conference. I sit at the feet of my mentors. I like confiding in my elders. I have a lot of respect for the people who've been there, done that. All of my mentors run successful companies. And so we just kind of found each other organically. Like, it wasn't like back 100 years ago in 2008, 9, you could message someone and just be like, oh, you could be a little bit more assertive, but now,
there's loopholes.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit more sensitive. Yes. And so, but yeah, 10 years ago when I met a lot of my mentors, it was just a very organic connection. So 2 of my male mentors, one of them, his name is Stuart. He's phenomenal. We meet once a month for 1 hour, and we've been doing that for like 10 plus years. My other male mentor, I fly to DC every quarter, and we spend half a day together, and he just downloads into me. And then the other 5 are female mentors, and I'll meet, like, we have a more fluid relationship, but my male mentors, it's very, very structured. And I think as the mentee, it's also up to you to state what you require of a mentor, how much time you need from your mentor, and architect that relationship. It's not up to them to hit you up and to find you and to chase you. Like, the women that I mentor, they're in this room, they know how I operate. Like, they know, don't play with me. You know what I mean? And they're laughing because they know, right? Because you just, it's just really important that if you assign someone as your mentor and you're connected and they're investing in you, the best way to say thank you is to show up.
Yes. So what would you say is key in successful mentee and mentor relationships?
Show the receipts, right? If your mentor gives you homework, honor the homework, show up, be consistent, over communicate. It's just really simple. You may feel like you don't have anything necessarily to offer a mentor, but just showing up is actually more than enough. And mentorships look different. Like, I have a history with my mentors, but you can also do 20-minute informational interviews with mentors. It can be peer mentors. Like, you should be able to look to your left and look to your right and connect with peers and grow with them as well. It doesn't have to be so formal all of the time.
I like that. And I think the best people we learn from are also in the room as well.
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
Your students in your classroom, your teachers, your friends at the table, they are the best people to kind of hold you accountable if they're in the same wavelength as you, but also, they're going through the experiences too. So I also like the peer mentorship part too. And I think it's usually your peers. I mean, we do say you're one of the 5 people you hang around with. And so if the people you're in the room with are also successful, are all going towards that vision as well, then those are the great people to connect with as well. Just because you can't reach a Pauleanna doesn't mean you can't reach your friend right beside you, right?
Yeah.
Can you share a memorable experience from your mentorship program, either with your mentors or your mentees, that has embodied like that impact that you speak of in their lives?
So I have a mentorship program called New Girl on the Block. I founded it in 2015, and I've mentored over 200 women in 11 countries. And honestly, like, all of my girls are special to me, but I have to say some of my most memorable moments right now is the work I do as a professor at George Brown College. So I teach once a week. I teach an English class. It's called Business Communications. And one of the reasons why I have decided to teach, even though, Lord, I don't have the time, like, I don't have the time, but it's really important to me because I can't dismantle an entire system, but I can impact 40 students at a time. And so we have a blast. I love my students. And like, I would have to say, you know, being in the classroom is one of my favorite places to be. Yeah. And what's really beautiful is the fact that I get to make my own curriculum. I don't have a textbook, so I can do whatever I want, talk about whatever I want. I can bring real world stories to the table. And I love my students. I tell them all the time after they leave my class, like at the end of the semester, like, invite me to your weddings and your baby showers and your graduations. Like, don't leave me. Like, you know, like, I want to continue this conversation. And they know that they can reach out to me anytime they want to. I will be there for them. And they know, even like anyone I've ever mentored or touched, like, they absolutely know that they can reach out to me anytime. But I want to also encourage the audience, like, you can create mentoring moments for the people around you, right? It can be a single conversation. It could be a smile at a stranger. It could, like, you don't have to be in a certain position to be a mentor.
That's good. I think people see, I don't know about you guys, but when I first reached out to a mentor, I was scared. It's like, oh, yeah, this is different. But you're right. Like, it's almost, again, having that conversation and just opening up yourself for that, and letting people know exactly what it is that you need, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I think we're afraid to ask for what we need.
Yes.
But there are so many people who are willing to help, and you don't know what kind of resources they have. You don't know what kind of network they have. But if you don't raise your hand, we can't read your mind, right? And
I think that goes to saying, like, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? We know that average guy in the office who has, like, no skills. He never like, he doesn't contribute to the group. Like, he's just phony baloney, but he's like the loudest, and he's confident, and he walks around like, the research shows that the people who put their head down and do the work, they will always get skipped over for the raise, for the title change, for all of that good stuff. They always get skipped over for the person who's, like, way more confident and involved, and it's like, sometimes you're like, how did you? Yeah. And it's because you had your head down and doing the work, and you're not, you haven't popped up in a minute. Yeah.
That's so good. So we're towards the end of our conversation. Is there any parting words that you have or thoughts for our audience?
The only parting words is just to stay in communication with me. I'm very, very accessible by email. My phone number's on the internet. You can find it, whatever. But, like, stay in communication with me. I'm very invested, and I love hearing what people are up to, what they're working on. So please feel free to get in touch.
I love that. I would echo the same thing, but I have a really hard time with text messages. No, but connect with her, but I would also open up my doors to say that if there is anything you want to know about me, you could also find me too. So quick fire round. Ready?
Yeah.
Before we do Q&A?
Yeah.
What are your hidden talents or interests?
I like chess. I really love chess. I use chess as a metaphor for life and business. If you really want to, like, I think we have we have a literacy issue in our country, and I think we have a critical thinking issue in our country, not in North America, and we have a problem-solving issue in North America. And if you want to strengthen those skills, play chess.
Okay, what activities bring you the most joy outside of work?
Hanging out with my fiance.
Oh! Ooh. Okay, throughout your career journey, or even during your time in school, did you ever have a backup plan, like a plan B in case things didn't work out as expected?
No, I wanted to be a writer, and that was my only path.
Beautiful. And if you hadn't pursued career in journalism or ghostwriting, what other path do you think you might have taken?
Definitely psychology, because I love assessing. Oh, remember I said hack your brain? 2 people that you should tap into is Candy Calderon and Jim Quick, Kwik. They are phenomenal individuals that talk about brain health and memory and all of that good stuff. Yeah.
Can somebody write that down? Thanks. What would you say is the recipe to staying mentally and physically well while running a business and a team?
Therapy. I think no matter, even if you have a business or you're in a 9-to-5, like, because therapy is not just for people who may feel unwell, it's a tune-up, right? I go to my therapist even like when it's a good day, when I'm having great things to report about. So I just, having a therapist for sure. That's the hack. I think most people are chasing goals that they're not mentally conditioned for. And like you're wondering like why things are not clicking, why things are not working. You're not mentally conditioned for it. And so whether you use therapy as a vehicle, whether you use physical exercise as a vehicle, it's really important to focus on your brain health and your mental well-being.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love that you say that, because it brought me to one of the things that my mentor said, and he said, stop treating your body like a Honda. And I was like, what are you talking about? That was my first car. But he said, you know, what kind of fuel do we put in a Ferrari? What kind of fuel do we put a Lambo? How do we treat it? Where do we park it? Do we cover it? Like, how do we treat it? You should be treating yourself that same way. So I love that you said a tune-up, because when I think of, you know, we don't let our gas tanks run empty, or maybe you do and you drive it past the kilometer, but you don't, because you care about your vehicle and you care about the maintenance of it. So why wouldn't we do the same thing for ourselves and our bodies? So thank you so much for this fireside chat.
This is good. You did a great
I learned
job.
so much. So that's it for me, although I could go on with the questions. In case you guys don't have any written down, I have more. But, right there. So can we have a mic passing so we can go ahead and address the questions?
Thank you both for today. Thank you so much, Pauleanna, for today. One of the things I know, like, you're passionate, Pauleanna, about mentorship. You spoke already to it a lot tonight. But we know that you have your Mentor Mondays. And I was just wondering if you could speak to what are some of your favorite opening questions when you have that 15-minute slot with new people, and what can folks who might want to be participating in that prepare for?
So every Monday for the last few years, I have been doing this thing called Mentor Monday. And so I announce it on social media, and people can email me directly and book 15 minutes in my calendar, and we can talk about anything you want. And it's a way for me I just really love to know what people are up to, what they're working on. It's a way for me to keep my brain sharp, because I love when people ask me questions, and very rarely am I stumped, but like I love the challenge. And so my audience online, they know not to waste any. It's so interesting when they come on Zoom and they're like, I know I only have 15 minutes, so here are my questions. And I'm like, you know how to deal with me, and I love it. You know, they don't waste any time. And I have to say, most people ask really thoughtful questions. And that's how you can enrich your conversations. Like, there are obviously sometimes people who just want to hear me breathe, and it's kind of just like awkward silence. But most people come correct. So I would just say, like, whenever you're having an informational interview with somebody or meeting with someone for a quick touch base, like, your question should be specific to what it is the problem you're trying to solve. That's probably the best way to get the most juice out of the conversation.
Thanks for the question.
You guys are amazing.
It's not a question, it's a comment.
I went to high school with Jamila. I love you.
School disrespects.
Yes, of course, Wilderness Parkway.
Let's just bring it back.
Very true.
The comment really is, now that I know your mom's in the audience, I just have to say how proud I am to have witnessed, listen, from middle school to high school, when Drake says started from the bottom, now you're here. Like, from that and all the stuff that happened in high school to where you are now, to witness it is incredible. For your mom to be in the audience
is incredible.
Be in the audience watching your mom watch you
is incredible.
So I love it. So
oh yeah, for sure.
Mom, I can't wait to hug you. I love this. Can you guys say?
Thank you, Jamila. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. You know what? I want to say something really quick about parents. You know, Spike Lee says parents are the biggest dream killers, and I do believe that. However, you know, I think that they just simply don't understand. And so, like, I get a lot of students who are battling, you know, listening to their elders versus listening to your heart, I'm always going to tell you to listen to your heart. Your parents love you, but they don't always know what's best for you. And so I would say listen to your heart, because your heart will never lead you astray. Like your parent, like me and my mom are best friends right now, but like she be stressing me out. Like, you know, like growing up, we just had different definitions of success. But again, I'm looking through my vantage point of view, and she's looking through hers. So it just didn't align. But you know, the best thing, if you want to change your parents' heart, change their reality, right? Because now pushing through allows, you know, I've been able to really help the family in meaningful ways and like enrich our lives in meaningful ways. And so if you're going to defy your parents, just make sure you put numbers on the scoreboard. Make sure you actually make it.
Hi.
Hi, Randy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Everyone needs to follow Pauleanna on social media, because she's always dropping gems and knowledge, and you're so generous with your time. So my question for you is, where do you find the capacity to be so generous with your time? Because I find with myself, people are always coming at me and I run from it. And I hear boundary focus.
Yeah.
And I don't like welcome it the way you welcome it. I'm very selective and picky and choosy. But I admire the fact that you have so much capacity. You're doing Zoom calls. You're opening up your social media. You just told this whole room to message you. Where do you get that capacity from? And I don't know if I'm gonna like follow suit, but I'm curious.
So as an executive assistant, a big part of my job was managing calendars. So I really do think that like I manage my time very, very well. So I will allocate, I won't have random meetings in random days. I will allocate certain days and blocks of time to mentor calls or community building or whatever the case may be. So like every minute of my day is scheduled. When I'm taking a nap, if I have to pick my nose, like it's literally on the calendar, you know? And so I don't waste minutes of the day. Yeah, so everything's scheduled. And honestly, sometimes like when me and my friends want to catch up, sometimes we book that like a month out, right? Not everything has to be locked in every week. My therapist and I actually spoke about, she's gave me a challenge to look at my calendar, and my first decision of the day is to see what I can move. And so I'll move things weeks out, and like eventually, if it's not urgent, we can talk next month. So that's also how I manage it too.
I was gonna say, I also think you teach people how to treat you, so people take your time, like you
Yeah,
said,
that
very
too.
seriously. And
People
so,
don't mess with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even I don't. Like we scheduled the call yesterday at 7 p.m. Like we don't mess around. Not 7:01, 7 p.m. Okay.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this discussion. I have two things to say. One, of course, is a comment, and the other is a question. You can respond to both or any
Sure.
one you choose. The first thing I thought about was you have a no excuse attitude, and that's how you live. That's it works for you. And you also mentioned that you deal with a lot of sadness. So I thought on the one hand it seems very opposite.
Yeah.
And yet you have the patience to let that experience continue to its completion.
Yeah.
So that is, I don't know how you do it, I'd love to know. And the second
I'd love to, we'll pause there. I love to comment, like, I don't use my sadness as an excuse, right? Like I allow myself to cry, I allow myself to feel the feelings, but I continue moving forward and putting one foot in front of the other. So I may be sad or going through anxiety, but I try not to let it paralyze me, right? So yeah, it's not, if it was an excuse, I'd still be in the same place I was last year, right? So I feel the feels, and I'm equipped with the tools that my therapist and my medical professionals have given me to work through it so I can continue.
I find that very fascinating because you don't rush yourself. That's what I was kind of saying.
I appreciate that.
And the second thing I was going to say is, have you considered any other ways, like you mentioned that to change the system, you're teaching at George Brown, you're teaching business communications, and you create your own curriculum.
Yeah.
So have you looked at any other ways where you want to change or rewrite the way people think about themselves and how they learn?
That's a great question. I mean, so transparently, I dropped out of Sheridan in my second year. I decided to, and by default, I earned a certificate. I was in a 2-year diploma program, and I decided to turn the world into my classroom. And so, creating my mentorship program and mentoring over 200 women in 11 countries is my contribution and my way of teaching the next generation that they can, like, ultimately when I'm instructing them or advising them, I'm leveraging life experience where like I allow a lot of my mentees to job shadow me, right? Like we're on the ground, like, you know what I mean? So like, it's like alternative education, if you will. So that's how I'm also trying to change the world through mentorship.
And you also have a novel, so people can read up on it.
That too.
Hi.
Hi. You're very welcome.
Like, you speak to me. I'm getting all the feels today. Let me pull up my question here. So I wanted to know, in your busy time and like even on your pursuit to success,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that keep you grounded and like keep you present?
Keep me. So I have a best friend that I've known since I was 4, and she could care less about all of this shit, right? And so what my favorite thing to do to like ground myself and just remind me of what's important is just sit on the couch and talk to her for hours. So, you know, I think we all have different pockets of friends, and so not all of my friends are running companies and trying to save the world. Like some of my friends are just happy being mommies and just happy kicking it and, you know, just chilling. And so I need both.
And I have my second question. Okay, so when you were talking about breaking through the box and like hacking your brain, what was like that initial moment that you realized like, F these people for trying to put me in a box? Like, what was that like initial step that forced you to like bust through that box?
When my mental health got really, really bad. So like at the height of my mental health was during my college years. Oh wow, there's a lot of hands. It was during my college years. And so like, for me, it was a matter of life or death, right? It was a matter of, I can't believe I got to such a dark place because of so many outside voices. Like I need to reassess what's important to me, and I need to figure out like my path forward. So it was really I got to a very dangerous place, and like it's one of those things where like if the simple change I could have done is just listen to my gut, and so that's what I chose to do. Yeah.
I'll be so fast. The microphone came close to me, so
Cool.
I am inspired. My whole soul is sparkling, and I just think this is so fabulous.
Thank you.
I'm lucky to be here with all my friends.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Hi, Pauleanna.
Hi.
Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
So I don't know if you remember me, but we sat together in the box for the Beyonce concert.
Yes.
I was beside you, and I think that's your best friend that you were talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
I met her, everyone. She's fabulous. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I have a few questions, and now I'm kind of in the middle of my career, and I'm just finding myself breaking down a little bit when even right now my watch should be going off saying that my heart rate is going up because I'm nervous to speak in front of people. So I'm wondering if either of you have any tips, like when you're nervous. I've had a few chats even recently, and I've kind of like frozen because I'm just so nervous speaking.
You want to take this one?
Sure. So I have 2 things. One's like faith related. I became a Christian 4 years ago, and it's honestly been the most transformative thing in my life. I went through a lot when I was younger, a lot of things I can't even remember. And our videographer asked me, like, are you nervous? I was like, no, but it's because Pauleanna and I prayed before we got here. And one of the biggest thing for me is prayer. And it's knowing that everything that I have is because of God, and knowing that everything that I feel was already created, and He knows it all. And so I find a lot of peace in a scripture. It's not coming to my brain right now, but it says, do not be anxious for anything, but pray about everything. And then it also says, seek first the kingdom and all will be added. And so I think that's Matthew 6:33, if I'm just kind of stumbling upon a few things, but I have a list. So scripture and prayer really help me, because sometimes we're nervous because 1, imposter syndrome hits, 2, we don't feel qualified, 3, we often feel like what we have to say isn't of value and the person's not going to hear you. And so is it nervousness, or is it just this lack that you feel? And so for me in that space, I just got to take a deep breath, and I just say, like, honestly, God, this is all in your hands. So whatever the outcome is, whether it's for me or not, I trust you. And so that's my, I guess, faith-based example. And I don't, not everyone is Christian, not everybody believes in God. I think the second thing is that, like, just bet on yourself. and remember who you are, whether affirmations are your thing or something that you have to do to prep for that. There's a lot of rooms that I've been walking in lately that I am not qualified to walk into. Thank you. But the nervousness gets me because, and then I just have to go in and just be like, Sophia, like, this is who you are, and just like stand firm, because nobody would have known that you were nervous until you introduced yourself as that. Like, I'm nervous, right? Like, before stating, hi, I'm Sophia Aguilar, like, hi, I'm nervous and I'm Sophia, right? So you get to state the flow of the conversation and remember what you're in control of versus what, you know, the whole world needs to kind of go.
She said it all. Are you using a calendar? Are you tracking your time?
I'm not tracking my time. I'm using
I would track how you're currently spending your time, because you'll find that you're probably wasting time in certain areas. And then I would use a calendar management system to track your time. Yeah. Hi, Kiana. Kiana, take up space. Stand up. Kiana's someone that I mentor, and she's like my sister.
Hi, everybody.
So I'm gonna have a higher standard for her.
I have a question now. So we're talking today about playing the game with finesse, and I know you're an avid chess player. You spoke about going to New York for back-to-back meetings, but the question that I have is, how did you build those relationships to begin with, and what are some strategies that you use to build and nurture your relationships?
Okay, so one strategy that I use, I'm an Excel nerd, and I have a spreadsheet, and it has the basic info of people that I connect with, and it has about 400 people that I meet with and connect with throughout the year. And so one column that's really important is whether or not they're a high or low priority, whether or not they're a hot, warm, or cold lead. And then I have a column for notes. So I know the last time we spoke, what we spoke about, whether Johnny had a recital, whether you went through a breakup, were you in the hospital, and I'm able to personalize my follow-up, connection. So really understanding people and actually listening to what people say and the stories they tell you. And the other thing is just add value. If you are a resource for people, if you know what they're dealing with, going through, you can provide some sort of solution, an article, however you can add value. I think that will always make someone day, and you'll always stay top of mind. And then the other thing is just like following up with people. Sometimes it's just a text to say what's up. It doesn't have to have, you don't have to have an email that has a mission statement and a goal and, I want to meet with you. It doesn't have to be so formal. It can be a text just to check in on people. People really appreciate that.
Sorry, I gave you my idea, but I have a follow-up question. So, like, I know you were saying you're having these back-to-back meetings, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are you starting those relationships? Is it on social media first?
Yeah, sometimes it's social media. Like, my spreadsheet also has a tab of people I would like to meet with, but I don't know yet. But you'd be surprised what can arise from a simple hello. So you can simply just email somebody, introduce yourself, and just simply state that, you're looking to build relationships and friendships with more women, both as friends and as clients. And you're going to be in New York for 24 hours and you would like to meet for a coffee. That's people, so it's literally simple math. And I think just people overthink and complicate the process. And if she says no, or he says no, or they don't have time, they don't have the capacity, respect it and move on. There's 8 billion people in the world. Network with other people.
My final question is, one thing that I'm taking my chance.
Go.
One thing that you always talk about is consistency, and how you can beat out the competition just by being consistent.
100%.
People are not consistent.
100%.
Can you just talk a little bit about how, the examples of how you use consistency, I guess, throughout your career to get you from here to? I just want an example.
Okay, so she said that what I always say is that you can beat out your competition just by being consistent, because most people don't stick to anything long enough to actually master it. So they will literally run out of steam year 1, year 2, year 3. I'm going into decade and a half later. So just staying in the game, just showing up for yourself is enough for you to outbeat your competition. You don't have a book that I love is called Blue Ocean Strategy, and that's a whole other Blue Ocean Strategy, which is another way to think about how you can beat out your competition. But honestly, just showing up. So in all facets of what I'm doing, whether it's speaking, whether it's writing, consulting, running my business, is just sticking to the goal helps me. I've seen people start with me and they're nowhere near me anymore. Yeah. Thank you for your questions.
Hi. Oh, hi.
We had a mentorship call a little while back, and I just actually wanted to say thank you because that day I was so lost, and somehow you still made it feel meaningful. I didn't even know what the hell to ask you. My day was just like going to shit, and then I finally got you on the phone. I was like, I have no train of thought now, but I still got so much value some way, somehow.
You're welcome.
So going to my question, we talked earlier, both of you guys touched on the importance of who we surround ourselves with and how we really are the combination of the 5 people we spend the most time with. I am in a stage of my life where I very much value my core people that have been with me through thick and thin. I will never leave them behind. However, I have very little in common with them right now. They're getting, I'm married, but they're having their babies. My business is my baby and I'm obsessed with it right now, and I'll get to the babies, but right now I don't have people in my life that are striving for what I'm striving. Like, they would never even imagine. I sound like Beyonce if I share with them what my vision is.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find the balance of still kind of fostering and nourishing those relationships, but what do you do when those relationships don't align with you in that way anymore?
You want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my friendships that I have now are not the friendships that I had then. However, my friends, communication is huge for me. I consider myself an over-communicator. However, it's still something I'm working on. And I'll let them know, like, hey, you know what, right now is a really busy season for me in my life, and I understand that this is what your priorities are, but here are mine. And I share it. I don't love the cancel culture that sometimes we're just like, you know what, I just leave you behind, I'm moving on, like, I'm doing better things, and you're having a child and I'm running a business, like, look at me, kind of thing. Rather, ask them what they need, because maybe they're in a place where they'd love to be involved in your business. Maybe they'd love to be one of your models. Maybe they'd actually love to pour in, but you dictate the warmth of your conversation. So think of it like a thermostat. If it's always going to, I think there's just 2 ways to navigate. Like, oh, these people are not at the same stage in my life. It's all about the baby talk. It's all about this. That's always how our conversations are going to go. Then that's just kind of how it ends up. Versus if these people are really important to you, one, they'll make the time to make their priorities also your priorities. But then get into a new group of circle, like being in rooms like this, connecting with us, and you get to create those opportunities for yourself. So yes, that they may not be the people you run to for business advice or support, or the people that you want to network with and take them to a networking party, but have those circles. I have key circles. There's best friends of mine that I see once every 6 months. And
that's more than enough.
And that's more than enough for us. That one time is all I need. That's my dose. And there's people like Pauleanna that I never see in person, but we text once a week. And it's very business related and personal as well. So I think, again, like, have those thermostat friendships and kind of understand, like, this is what I'd go to for this is what I go to for that, and just actually ask them. I think that's, like, huge in being able to be a friend, is listen to them and allow them to speak. Hopefully that answers your question. Do you want to say anything?
I like that. Well, I like the concept of still seeking out the other stuff and nourishing the others. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah. So it's nice to, because
you can do both. You don't have to have one friend, like your friendships for like your baby friends all the way till the grave. Some do, I don't.
We haven't touched base on this side. I think, yeah, these are the last few questions here.
This came from that side, but I couldn't see who was speaking, so but what I want to say relates to, now I can see your face, so Sophia, I tagged you yesterday on LinkedIn, so I'm that face if you remember.
Oh, okay.
So congrats on getting nominated for that.
Thank you.
My question is related to your comment at the beginning about when you want to approach a mentor and you don't know what to say, because a lot of what you're saying is come with your questions, come ready. But some people, they go blank, but they don't even know what are the right questions. So if you can give some advice of how someone would prepare to even get into that space, what can they strategically do on their end?
So before you even meet with a mentor, what I have told people, because there are people that have asked me generic questions, and what I'll do is I'll shut down the call, and what I will say is I'll ask them to go, like, I have a YouTube channel, I have social media, like, study the person that you want to meet with, because your answer is probably in their content. That's the first thing I will say. And also, if the answer is not in the content, you can leverage the content to ask a better, well-informed question. That's how I'd frame it. Your question should also be, it shouldn't be generic. It should be related to something that you're experiencing, a problem you want to solve. Like what is the purpose of the call then, right? So it should be focused on that.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Pauleanna. Nice to meet you. This is
Hi.
Fireside. Both of you touched upon the importance of mentorship, and like that really aligned with what I think. However, my question is this is something that I kind of struggle with finding an answer with. Like, okay, I know I need a mentor, and there's people that I would like to reach out to, but how do you ask someone to be a mentor?
So, okay, I want everyone to know that your mentors could be dead or alive, right? Like they don't necessarily have to be, I will answer your question. They don't have to be someone you could see, feel, and touch. They can be found in books. They can be like, you know, like podcasts, right? Like, so there are CEOs that every few months I'll choose a few CEOs and I'll deep dive into every single article, every single podcast, I'll study them, and that could be a form of mentorship too, right? So I just want to give context to that. When approaching a mentor, I would say plant a seed. You can approach them via LinkedIn or via social and just maybe ask for an informational interview. Tell them that you would like to learn more about their career journey, and because you feel that there are some principles and lessons that will be applicable to the goals that you have. And that can be like a 15-minute, 20-minute call. And if it goes well, then maybe you can follow up. You can ask if you can schedule a follow-up call, right? It doesn't have to be so formal, but I think an informational interview is a really great way. For those of you who also have vehicles of like a blog or a podcast, planting the seed and interviewing people who you really want to build relationships with is also a phenomenal way to establish connection with someone that you really admire. When I had a blog, I saw someone that I loved on Shark Tank, and I emailed her and I interviewed her for my blog. This was 2014, and she is single-handedly the reason why I was hired at Forbes, right? So like having conversation through interviews is a really great way to connect with people too.
And I'll echo that, because sometimes you may not have the financial, like you may think like having a mentor means paying them a certain amount of money for a call. And I say I have a lot of online mentors. I listen to a lot of Andrew Fazella. There's a lot of books that I listen to audibles. I have the same issue with reading, like my words blur, but find online mentors. And I would also say there's nothing wrong with, I guess, having, like Pauleanna said, having multiple people. But one of the ladies that I had on my podcast, I needed support financially. Like I wanted to unblock my money mindset. I needed help with like finances and moving the next step in my business. I had her on my podcast, and to this day, that's why I got what I needed to get, because I interviewed her and I asked her all the questions on my podcast, and I was like, great. And now she has a platform, right? So I think, like, echoing the same thing that you said, ask them questions, tell them also what it is that you're looking to gain from it. It's not just like, I want to get business advice. For what kind, when, who, where, why, right? Like be very intentional with your ask, because otherwise I'm going to give you a very generic answer and just say, yeah, just start the business, go get a business number kind of thing, right?
You're welcome. Hi.
Hi, Pauleanna.
Hey.
So I have been following you for the last 6 years, ever since you started Fireside, and you have been consistent in your messaging for the last 6 years. And my question is, given your experience over 10 years, 20 years, how long you've been doing this, how do you stop and enjoy the moment while also thinking about your next move?
Ooh, what a great question. You've learned from me very well. So that's part of the reason why I document so many moments, is because I don't want to forget them. So honestly, documenting the content helps me savor them, whether it's my YouTube or my IG platform. I'm also super old school. Like I love photo albums. I'll like print the moments, but like, man, I mean, this is what I do. So I have like a gratitude journal, and at the end of the day, I'll usually ask myself, like, what was your high and what was your low? And so for like several years back, I have moments where, and then what I'll do at the end of the year is I'll go through the year's moments and I'll sit with them. And that's how I kind of figure out how I want to move forward with the next year. Yeah.
So good.
Thank you for your question. Very thoughtful.
Hello.
Hi.
So
Ash. Thank you.
Hi everybody. I am one of her mentees, and I think she started mentoring me when I just had my baby, which was 6 years ago, so a long time. So my question is, it was kind of answered a bit when she asked her question, but I kind of want to dive a bit deeper. So a lot of times I'm thinking about rooms that I feel like I'm not ready to be in, but the people leading or supporting my growth are now giving me that space to be in those rooms. And I find myself just not, you're gonna be like, I know this already, I'm not finding the confidence to actually show up in these rooms with senior executives and leaders in the industry without feeling intimidated. So how do I take advantage of that or prepare for that event or opportunity without losing the opportunity?
That's a great question. Everything boils down to preparation and why are you in the room, right? So I have gone to events and I know the speakers and okay, I know I want to connect with this speaker. So maybe I'll research what has this person been, I'll equip myself with speaking points by studying what they've been up to, listening to podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. I just equip myself with what I want to say and the intention behind it, right? I won't just walk into a space or walk into a meeting or go to an event just in the clouds. So confidence comes from being prepared. And if you're prepared, and honestly, the fear doesn't go away, even at my level and the people that I'm meeting with, the rooms that I'm in, the conversations that I'm having, there's still some nervousness there, right? But I also trust myself. I trust myself in these conversations because, again, facts over feelings. I have the knowledge, experience, and expertise, and I know what I bring to the table. And I know, you know what? I know that if these people really got to know you, Ashley, they'd be equally as impressed. So you also have to find that confidence within yourself to know that you also bring something. This is why when I was talking to the billionaire, I could have crumbled when she tried to diss me. Girl, I'm someone too. Check it. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So you have to know that if they really got to know you, they would also be really happy to engage.
I appreciate that, thank you. I have one last follow-up. How do you do that without it feeling transactional or feeling you're asking a question and you're using them, I think in simple terms?
I mean, if you really care about people in a genuine way, you're not gonna come across as if you're using somebody. Right? It's a conversation is an onion. There's layers. So just doing more listening than you talk and listen out for key things. Or again, being prepared. If I look at Suzanne's Instagram and I see that she has a new granddaughter and I see that she went on a trip to Aruba and I may touch on what are the points of mutual interests that I can maybe start the conversation with instead of just being blah, 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 blah about work.
I think if I could add something that I used to do as well is I would research and I would audit and I would go to a lot of networking events and not know what the purpose was, and you would ask me why are you there? What's the reason? And oftentimes I would leave and I would say, hold on, I gotta go back, and I would just say hey, I noticed you don't have this on your social media. If you do need anything, here's what I could provide. Or I would just offer myself up to the individual, and it has paid dividends for me of just saying if you do ever need somebody to cover your speaking engagement, I'm there. I would love to listen to you speak, but also provide credentials for social media or something like that. That's just a personal example. So there could be, you do have leverage in saying I have these skills, I have these talents, how could I be of service to you? And I think it also allows the other person to say, okay, people are not always trying to get from me all the time. Here's how I could support you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Hi, Sophia. Hi, Pauleanna.
Hi.
So I have a question. You mentioned that one of your biggest source of inspiration is your family. I'm an international student, so oftentimes I don't have the medium to communicate with my family as much. And sometimes when you're working on something, you feel stuck. You don't know what to do, where to go. Do you have any tips on how to maneuver those days when you feel I don't know what to do next? I know you mentioned having mentors, but before getting to that stage, on days when you're God, I just don't know what to do. Do you have any tips that you could share with us?
I've definitely had points of frustration. I So I listen to affirmational mixtapes, right, to kind of reinforce and reset my energy. But like I said, like, you know, like I love a good whiteboard session. So if I feel stuck on a problem, I have a big whiteboard in my room, or I'll take a notebook, I'm old school, pen to paper, and I'll just work out what the most realistic steps are. I may call girlfriends. I have regular calls with some of my girlfriends who are also in a similar place to me, and we'll bounce ideas off each other. So like I said, like mentors don't need to be vertical, it can also be horizontal. Sometimes it's just like a call with a friend. Like me and Sophia will jump on a call and just like bounce ideas around. But yeah, like sometimes just mentally, you're just like, I don't know if I can take another step. So to reset that, sometimes I'll go, like nature is a really beautiful thing. I like sun, I'll get some fresh air, I'll like work out. Lifestyle changes helps me get my energy in gear. Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Stand up.
In the academia time of my life, something that I did and where I sought mentorship was actually the professors and the teachers that were teaching me. So when you feel stuck, don't be shy to hit up office hours. Like that is where it begins.
Very
and
true.
I think that if I hadn't gotten that advice, somebody gave me that advice when I was in high school, and it was traumatizing. Because even right now, I hate public speaking. I have a giant, like I'm on Instagram all the time, but I cannot do this. And it used to be really scary, but somebody taught me, they said at least a few times a week, even if you have nothing to say, pretend you have a question. Force yourself to go up at the end of class or on break and ask the prof something, because then when the day comes that you have a real question, they recognize and respect you already. And it could be whether you need them to bump your midterm, or it could be because you're having your quarter life crisis like I did. And then I had that crisis in the office of like a psychology teacher that I just felt very comfortable with. That was, I studied biology. She couldn't even really help me directly, but that woman changed my entire trajectory.
That's excellent advice.
So good.
You know what, and I will...
Academia thinking like you've got it all in your institution. Like,
I will say this, like I have office hours and not enough students take advantage of it, so you're actually spot on.
Yeah, like
and the ones that do,
resources.
I remember them, and I'm more lenient and I give them more grace because at least they tried and they raised their hand.
Yeah, so good. Should we take one last question?
Oh, hi Phoebe.
My name is Phoebe. My question is, over the years you've always talked about elevator pitches and making sure that you're selling yourself and knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Do you have 2 or 3 tips on the best elevator pitches and what it contains in 30 seconds?
So your elevator pitch should consist of who you are, what you do, and how you can help people. Like, it doesn't have to be overthought. It's like if you were at a dinner table and someone asked you, what are you up to? What are you working on? Who are you? If you were meeting someone for the first time, how would you introduce yourself? Now, I have multiple elevator pitches depending on the room I'm in, who I'm talking to, what the objective is, and I use them accordingly. But I think everybody, no matter if you have a business or in your 9 to 5, you should know how to give someone a handshake, right? Body language is very important, and know how to introduce yourself in, I would say like 3 sentences if you can. Yeah, it's honestly, it's life-changing, and it will shape how people perceive you. It's like the difference between, like I was in New York, sitting in a building lobby, and it was just, you know, it was just me. I was sitting there, I think I was waiting for a friend, and a gentleman came into the lobby, and very New York style of him, he was like, what do you do? Like he was waiting for the elevator, I was sitting on the bench. And I recited my elevator pitch, the one that I was equipped with at the time, and he was like, oh, like I need someone like you. And that was like my first $20,000 close, and that was like years ago. But because of my elevator pitch, because it was so concise to the point, because I wasn't umming and ahhing, and I had confidence, whatever I was selling, he was buying, you know? It could have been a paper bag, and he was like, cool, you know? So it honestly, like, it helps people see you as someone who takes yourself seriously.
That's great.
Cool, I think we're done.
Else?
Oh, we have one more.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, Claudia.
I saw your Instagram story. So I recognize your face.
Okay. So for someone that is multifaceted and or passionate.
And the one who, the person who founded it as well, is still somebody I speak to and keep connections with. And those dance opportunities allowed me to be in studios. And so everything's, I would say, cross-functional, transferable skills. And so utilize that. Don't let anybody ever tell you like, oh, don't do that. However, there is one thing I'll say. When I started VIP Content Days, which was my first signature offer, I stuck with that for a year. And so when you say consistency, that's how people got to know me. I did one thing for one full year, only because this was my moneymaker. I was like, I gotta go somewhere. I gotta go somewhere here. So I stuck through it. People knew me as the person who helped them create 30 days of content in one day, and that was it. So when they heard Sophia, when they heard social media, when they heard marketing, it was me. And again, character. So I guess that's a twofold question. I use those skills to become who I am, and I will never stop something. Again, I love talking, can you tell? So I started a podcast about whatever it is that I decide to talk about. So I still utilize those things. I never let them be a block, because there's so much blessings in still tapping into what you're still passionate about.
Before we wrap up, can I have two, actually, Alicia, do you want to pick 2 volunteers to come up? Mom, I have 2 books in my backpack.
And the one who, the person who founded it as well, is still somebody I speak to and keep connections with. And those dance opportunities allowed me to be in studios. And so everything's, I would say, cross-functional, transferable skills. And so utilize that. Don't let anybody ever tell you like, oh, don't do that. However, there is one thing I'll say. When I started VIP Content Days, which was my first signature offer, I stuck with that for a year. And so when you say consistency, that's how people got to know me. I did one thing for one full year, only because this was my moneymaker. I was like, I gotta go somewhere. I gotta go somewhere here. So I stuck through it. People knew me as the person who helped them create 30 days of content in one day, and that was it. So when they heard Sophia, when they heard social media, when they heard marketing, it was me. And again, character. So I guess that's a twofold question. I use those skills to become who I am, and I will never stop something. Again, I love talking, can you tell? So I started a podcast about whatever it is that I decide to talk about. So I still utilize those things. I never let them be a block, because there's so much blessings in still tapping into what you're still passionate about.
Before we wrap up, can I have 2, actually, Alicia, do you want to pick 2 volunteers to come up? Mom, I have 2 books in my backpack. Something that I do. One of my favorite books is called The $100 Startup. And I'm going to gift each of you with a book, and I put $100 in them to plant a seed into your dream. So it's in the front. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So stay in touch and let me know how you flip it. You're very welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
What a great way to end the evening. Come on up, Michelle. What about another round of applause?
Thank you.
That's all I have to say. What an amazing and inspiring evening. I'm going to be honest, I've never known Pauleanna until working with PSB. We had to put out some content on her, so I started doing some research. And what I found was absolutely mind-blowing.
Thank
and
you.
After listening to her, I was just so attentive to everything that she had to say. And I just want to say, Pauleanna, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
The tips that you shared about bossing up and being just like a real woman out there, it's very inspirational. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And as students, sometimes we don't take the time to acknowledge these events and to be thankful for what we have. But from these events, we can learn so much.
Absolutely.
So I just want to personally say thank you so much for coming back. You and Sophia, thank you for coming.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So I do know we are running late, but so Pauleanna and Sophia are here for another about 20 minutes or so. So we can begin the networking portion. Please take this opportunity to connect with Pauleanna and Sophia.
And connect amongst each other,
yeah,
too.
remarkable people in the room. There's some light refreshments in the back.
Can I take a picture first?
Huh?
Want to do a picture
Thank
first?
you
Sure.
everyone for attending tonight.